Hawks boss, Godfrey Lebeya, says the unit has arrested 611 suspects in connection with national priority offences. He also outlined progress made in relation to COVID-19 related crimes while giving an update on the first quarter of the financial year. Lebeya joins us now for more insight. Good to have you, General. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening to you and your viewers.
So reflect for us then on the first quarter 2023-2024. I think what is key for me is that you outline, of course, the 661 cases, but 229 convicted, 16 on money laundering and 203 on fraud. Are these cases related to money laundering happening within the states? Or is it largely also happening within the private sector?
With regard to the cases of money laundering, is both inclusive, where the state may be a victim, and also in the private sector. We did not differentiate between those that affect the state and those that affect private sector alone. But it is all a combination of various typologies of money laundering.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you, General, especially when you know that in the public's eye, there is this anticipation of seeing particularly key politicians being in orange overalls for crimes that would have been committed around the money taken from the state?
In our investigation, obviously, we do not discriminate. A suspect is a suspect, whether it is a politician or is an ordinary business person or an ordinary employee for that matter. For us, is to look at the crime that has been perpetrated, and then we produce the evidence that is required by the prosecution authority in order that they may be decide whether to prosecute or not. Once there is sufficient evidence, indeed the presiding officials will return a judgment of guilty. So that is all what we do. If you look at the various individuals that we have arrested, there are those who are politicians. But there are those who are involved in other businesses or ordinary employees.
So if I look at, for example, the 30 cases that you presented, case 20 particularly would stand out for many because of Mr. John Block, who is cited there as having been arrested. Would you say that would be the only high-profile political figure that you would have arrested in the first quarter?
Obviously, some of them will not be listed as that high because they are not holding specific positions, but they play a role in politics. So for us, that is among those that we can highlight. In these 30 cases, it's not everything. We have indicated that there were 840 successes, but obviously we can't read all of them. And some of the individuals that we might be considering as ordinary persons, they may indeed be involved in other activities, including politics. But that, I think that because of the profile that he was holding, it becomes very visible that this indeed was involved in political activities.
Yeah. Two particular cases on the serious commercial crimes that would have been investigated is the RTMC matter as well, maybe as the TVET funds matter. I'm sure there are others, but if you could take us into some of the fundamental details of the RTMC matter and how that crime was committed.
With regard to the TVET related activity, obviously what we are looking at is to see how were the processes of appointing companies that are supposed to do the work done. So obviously, if there were processes that were done which did not follow the law, that become an allegation that we look at all the aspects. Was the tender process followed? If so, did those who were awarded the contract have all the necessary requirements to be awarded a contract? If not, then that becomes the contravention of some of the criminal offences in the statute. And some of them, if there was a misrepresentation of the truth, then there is also common law offences that we look at. So when we conduct investigation, we look at all the activities, which is why you will see that in some of our cases, we will be citing more than 10 types of offences. So that is how we have unearthed this. The rest of the nitty-gritties, which we don't always reveal in the media space to avoid the affecting of the criminal case when it comes, we leave it for the court itself to start so that that type of evidence can be presented and the accused persons can have an opportunity to dispute if they so wish.
Yeah. But does this and the successes that you're citing, particularly around state-owned entities, give insight, particularly to government, as to what happens? I know, for example, you're saying one of the beneficiaries of a particular tender would have had a tax certificate, for example, that would not be valid, but were awarded the contract anyway. And it was only after the fact that the first tranche of the money had been actually issued that this was brought to the attention of the authorities. But does this give insight into government as to how these crimes are committed within the system and where the loopholes are at?
Yeah, I think that when crime is being committed, when we present these cases in court, we also expect that in some other companies, inclusive of government department, they will also be observing that this become a method of committing crimes. That is what you normally say, modus operandi. So if one company is able to fraudulently use a tax clearance certificate, the possibility is that it may not be the first company that is doing that. So when these things are being revealed, we expect that the others will become more vigilant to ensure that they are not going to be defrauded in the same way by means of forged documents. So that it is an occurrence that we observe in other environments, both in private and government departments. I think it doesn't differ with those that will produce a qualification certificate as an example. On the face of it, it may appear to be a legitimate document, whereas it is falsified.
Yeah.
So that is something that we always look at. We appreciate those who check on this document so that when they detect, they report to the authorities so that investigation can be conducted.
Right.
Which is an example of this one where after it was picked up that this tax clearance certificate is falsified, then the authorities have reported, which resulted in the investigation being conducted.
Yeah. Would that also, I suppose, be as a result of the close cooperation that you're now having with SARS under this new MOU that would, for example, allow you to be able to quickly detect and pick up instances of that nature?
Indeed, it assists us because then the collaboration is closer. We expect that we will be doing the same with other entities, which obviously is also promoted by the South African Police Service Act, as amended in 2009, as well as 2012, where there is an obligation that we should be working together in what is called National Priority Crime Operational Committee. So SARS is one of those entities that we work closely with. We have entered into that memorandum of understanding, which I think it assists us so that while they work in line with their law, there is also close cooperation so that when there is crime detected, they can easily report to us, and then we will be ready to take it further.
Yeah. General, I have to ask you this because I suppose it's a question on many people's minds. For example, you're reporting 16 money laundering cases out of the 229 convicted. And one looks at that and say, well, it's compared to the fraud cases and maybe the other cases that you're looking at, it's quite a low number in terms of money laundering. Tying that up with what members of parliament are saying could have happened at the Pala farm of the president, saying it's money laundering. And they would have expected that the Hawks would have easily investigated that and come up with that conclusion. Are money laundering cases difficult to prove and to solve than what many would perceive?
You know, a case of money laundering does not stand alone. It is based on another crime that shall have been committed elsewhere. So a crime is being committed. As an example, a robbery takes place and then money is stolen. When you find that the suspect with the money, you charge that individual with robbery. You don't charge that individual with money laundering. It is only when the process of trying to hide the origin take place. And so it means that there shall have been a original crime that has been committed before you look at money laundering. The 16 cases that we are talking about are those that have been concluded. It is not all the offences that are currently pending in court.
Yeah.
We have indicated, as an example, the case that is currently pending in KwaZulu-Natal on the Durban waste. There are more than 2,000 money laundering offences, charges that are before the court in that specific matter.
Yeah.
So most of our high-profile commercial-related cases, there is some element of money laundering. So these cases, I think that when we closely monitor them, we will see that we are indeed focusing on those, which is what the FATF is also interested in.
So what you're saying that it wouldn't necessarily go to conclude that when you had money stashed up in your couch that you were trying to conceal that money and therefore there could be a connection to money laundering to that particular activity.
What I'm saying is that there should be a first offense that has been committed elsewhere, and that the money that you are having is a loot. You want to wash it. Money laundering, which means that you want to wash this dirty money because where you got it is not in a correct way. And that is when you start washing, that is when money laundering starts taking place. There is self-laundering and there is laundering to other third parties, inclusive of professional individuals.
And how do you feel about the Reserve Bank saying, well, they would not be particularly investigating money laundering, but they would have been investigating the the offense around whether or not the exchange regulations would have been broken, saying the money laundering aspect would have to be something for other entities. And I'm thinking in the Phala matter, that would mean the Hawks.
Yeah, I think that obviously I will not be speaking on the behalf of the South African Reserve Bank. What I'm focusing on is what the DPCI is doing. We indeed investigate criminal offenses. So there are various witnesses who will come, and some witnesses include entities. As an example, the South African Reserve Bank can be one of those witnesses that we obviously expect or we shall have already engaged in order to hear from their side. What we do is we look at criminal offenses. We do not rule at the beginning of the investigation whether a crime has been committed or not. What we do is to gather all the necessary evidence and we package and put it before the National Prosecuting Authority, which have got power to prosecute on the instant of the state,
right,
which power include the power not to prosecute. So that we do. We work closely with those. We get guided by them and say that you haven't completed this portion. We also need to be hearing this side.
Yeah.
And that is what we do. It's a science where we systematically get the truth.
Right. We always appreciate you coming on, General, and updating us on these figures and some of the work that you're doing and the successes that you're reflecting on. Much appreciated. Thank you for coming on this evening.